Lynn, lovely to see you this morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to join me for a conversation. I'm Michelle Emmerson from the Pipeline. I look after GENIE as Managing Director and joined the Pipeline back in January. So actually this is the first time that we've got to speak to each other sort of face to face. So I've heard so much about you, and I know you've been working with Margaret and Lorna and the Pipeline team for some time now. Would you like to start maybe by just explaining a little bit about what you do with Pipeline and how you work with us?
Well, absolutely. But first of all, thank you for having me, Michelle, and I'm glad you're aboard. And what you're doing with GENIE is fantastic. We need this kind of information to help us move forward. So welcome. I came to the Pipeline via a mutual acquaintance of Margaret and mine, and really we just hit it off right from the start because we are on the same page about advancing women and making sure that there is tangible change at the top of the ladder. And what I do with the Pipeline is that I lead and facilitate the leadership summits. There are residential summits, and I'm amazed at how many brilliant women come through the Pipeline Leadership Summit, and their lack of confidence, in spite of the fact that they have a great amount of talent and tangible work behind them. So what we really like to do is encourage them, nurture their strengths, give them a way forward, and help them to really plot their journey to the top with something substantial and muscular when they leave, a real dedicated plan. And the successes we have seen have just been wonderful, so amazing.
I seem to feel like I'm hearing a story a week at the moment. There's some just incredible women that have gone through the program, aren't there? And it's really inspiring to hear about that journey. So Lynn, tell us a little bit about your journey. I mean, what has your career looked like up until you became an executive coach, and what made you decide to do that?
I have had to reinvent myself more than once, and I think that that's par for the course for any modern woman. I was an award-winning journalist for the networks back in America for 15 years, and I met this British man who I fell in love with and married and moved back here. And I actually thought that my journalism career would continue as it had been with the same amount of success in the States. And I got a rude slap in the face. In spite of the fact that we speak the same language, it is a completely different culture. And I did have many meetings set up. I even shot 2 full television series that never aired for the networks over here. And I took that as a sign that I had to do something different. So I looked back at what I thought were my strengths, and I decided I would like to have a career in helping other people realize their successes while building my own new success. And so I took out time to retrain as a coach, and I had some micro goals in mind that I wanted to finish this course in a year instead of 2 years, and that I'd be working. And actually, with the sheer force of determination and dedication, I made that happen 16 years ago. And I was fortunate enough that at the end of my studying, I gained a position in my doctor's practice in Harley Street and became their in-house coach. And then I continued, and I got my first big corporate client through them. And I went back and became more of an elite executive leadership coach and continued to master my craft. And that brings us to today, where I work with Fortune 500 companies, C-suite executives, and I work with smaller companies and individuals. And we do leadership journeys. I help them create their leadership journey. And when I'm not doing that, I'm looking after and building a foundation, helping young BAME candidates build a foundation to make it to the top of their careers. And I focus quite a bit in the creative industries because of obviously there's an overlap there for me. So yeah, I'm about women and BAME people making, watching their talent come to fruition.
Yeah. And gosh, at no time before have we been on the sort of leadership journeys as we're on right now. Yeah. I guess, we're working through really unprecedented times right now, and the coronavirus pandemic is having such a huge effect in the boardroom. I don't know about you, but what I'm personally seeing is that there are so many different executive roles that are coming to the fore. Particularly sort of HR directors, who for a long time have really fought, right, for a place at the table, and they're now sort of center stage. What are you seeing in terms of sort of trends and how the board and the executive are sort of changing through this crisis?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because there's been so much box ticking and lip service in the past. What I'm hoping for with a skeptical eye is that we will actually see some fundamental change at the executive level, and that HR actually returns to what HR should be. And that's not necessarily protecting the company, but protecting the employees and moving the employees forward and advanced in a structured and powerful way. And I think it's been interesting what I've seen amongst my clients in particular is that there's been anxiety. There's been a collective feeling that, we need to actually step up to the plate and enforce some change, and concerns about change, not only making sure that there's diversity at the top, but also there's been these companies that I've seen that kind of came out of the woodwork and said, this is, especially when it comes to, the racism and problems that we're seeing all around the world, this worldwide protest over George Floyd. It's just, it really is a wait and see for me, because to be honest, I covered Rodney King 25 years ago as a CNN reporter. I thought that was a moment of pivotal change. And I look back and I say, what's happened? While we had some forward progress, we really have stepped back in the last few years. And the populist movement, with the leadership around the world, it has really made us step backwards. And what that does to us as, world human beings, when you get pushed too far one way, you inevitably start going the other way. Mm-hmm. I hope this is a moment, a real moment in history, where we will see some true movement towards equality and diversity of all kinds at the top. Because quite honestly, if you cannot change the top of the ladder, you cannot effect change anywhere.
No.
You can keep filling people in at the bottom and push to a certain level, but if you don't change it at the top, it's not going to change. So I have seen some thought processes that we do need to do this. This is the time. Why is my phone ringing more right now? It's because of the way I look and that I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it isn't all of a sudden, it's always been kind of there for me in particular, because I've been determined, but definitely within the last month and a half, there has been a call for me to speak out and to be a part of and to help shape going forward. So that's interesting. Let's see where it goes. But I still am waiting to pass judgment. I'm waiting and watching.
It's really interesting you say that, because certainly, having worked with GENIE and the data that we've collected over the last few years, using the GENIE survey, we've, you can see that within organisations, there's been a big push to recruit more diversity at the sort of more junior and entry level positions. But, so you look at the top line numbers and you think, actually, this company is doing quite well. But it's only actually when you mine into the detail and you see that actually it's at a very junior level. that, you know, people may feel that they're joining an organization where they can truly belong, but actually the reality of living in that organization, feeling accepted, feeling that they get feedback and career development and so on, is just not there. And so it's interesting what you say, you know, we all want to increase the diversity at the top end of the organization, but in reality, unless we put those interventions in throughout people's career journeys, we're never going to see that fundamental shift, are we?
No, we aren't. And the sad thing is that when you really look at the numbers and the diversity at the top, and in particular, you know, BAME diversity at the top, you know, it's only 3%. And yet we, you know, represent so much more of the population. And then you just have to say, why is that? Because the impact on the bottom line, when it's women at the top and when there's diversity at the top across the board, is up to 31% increase in your bottom line. So why is it taking us so long? So that takes us back to a very fundamental thing. Human fear, the fear of change, the loss of power at the top. The top is very, very monochromatic. It is white and male. There is very little diversity. And until we change that, and like you said, create a support structure to move people through, mentors, sponsors, picking out the best and the brightest and nurturing that talent to move them to the top, I can't see how it's going to change. However, if this is the moment that we're going to do that, we're actually going to create that infrastructure where they're just saying, not saying, oh yeah, we've got our intern. Yes, we put that woman there. Yes, we put that lovely Black man there. Until we actually go, hey, that woman could run the show. Let's give her the support to move. Let's give her the voice and will to say she can make it to the top. Until that happens, we can't get there, but maybe this is the moment. And certainly at Pipeline, we've been trying to do that.
Yeah, and there's been so many articles and news features written recently, haven't there, about how female leaders are making such massive strides through this crisis and are having better results than their male counterparts. I mean, what do you think about that, and why do you think that is?
Well, here you go. New Zealand, Germany, Taiwan, Denmark. Women have a secret weapon, which is called emotional intelligence. We know how to be in touch naturally with not only our own feelings, but we can read other people's feelings and be able to use diplomacy and grace to look not only for the best of ourselves, but the best of the whole, the greater picture. Less as much ego, I think, as a man. So being able to read a situation, being able to actively listen to the experts, not thinking that you know everything, but being able to use that collective to come to smart conclusions is the foundation of their success. They listened to the science. They listened to the people. They took a look at what was necessary and they made decisions. They made decisions. They didn't sit and wonder, is this right, this wrong? They took the leap of faith and they trusted their own instincts, their gut instincts, their emotional intelligence, and they made good decisions. And that is the reason why they have been successful.
No, it's fascinating, isn't it? EQ is just so vital through these times. You know, business is all about people, and we're complex characters, and you know, everybody's situation is completely different. You can't treat everybody the same. You've got to have strategically tailored interventions, proper dialogues, open up the conversation. It's just, you know, it's simple, but listening, reflecting and advising, you know, it's absolutely the way forward. And it's
well, that's what leaders do. good leaders are only good, really, they know their strengths and they're usually great at one thing. They only have to be great at one thing, but they know what their people's strengths are and they play to their stakeholders' strengths. That's what they're there for. They're experts in different things that you're not. So you don't have them in those places unless you're going to listen to them and empower them so that you can make a great decision based on the facts. And that's how you lead.
Yeah. So, I mean, amongst the sort of coronavirus pandemic, we're also obviously dealing with those, the tragic events that have been happening in the US, and the murder of George Floyd. Many organizations are now looking internally and trying to work out, what do we do, how best to tackle this. How have you been working with clients and organizations, in the wake of these events, and what sort of advice could you share, Lynn, in terms of, the best way forward?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm watching, I'm hearing, I am glad to see that people are reaching out for help and ideas. And I hope this is not another box ticking exercise. But the thing that the first thing that we've really been doing is bringing everybody to the table, and asking the people that are in charge to listen to each other, and try to see that collective ideas bring a greater force together. They are the foundation of success, and that there does need to be support along the way, and there has to be, and God knows someone will kill me for saying this or hate me for saying this, but I don't care, but positive discrimination. In some cases, I feel that this is an important thing. In my personal life, we call it affirmative action in America. Had there not been affirmative action, would I have gone to private schools? Would I have an Ivy League education? Would I have had the confidence and courage to accomplish the things that people told me I could not accomplish, that society said is not for you? Black women are born at the bottom of the totem pole. This is not a choice. This is a reality. So it is still a reality. We need the support. We need people to encourage us. We need accountability from the people that created the situation. We need a dialogue. And we need to come to a collective decision about how to move ahead and to level the playing field. And I do believe that there is a sincere desire from some corporates, companies, individuals to make that happen. But I also know that there will still be a force of will against that happening. But the difference right now, the difference that George Floyd's death has made is that outcry is diverse. And we needed to have a diverse outrage. There's all kinds of people out there protesting. People are now going, you know what? This isn't right. We can't sweep this under the carpet. We saw this with our own eyes. And now there is a time for change. We need to all be accountable, and to be accountable for making fundamental changes in our societies for the better good of the world. And I'm praying that happens.
Yeah. I know, and were you involved in the leadership summit that Margaret and Lorna did back in September for BAME ladies?
Absolutely.
I hear such amazing stories coming from just that 3 days. And it's incredible that just 6 months later, more than 30% of the ladies on that program have now been promoted. It must be so rewarding and fulfilling to hear that. I know Margaret and Lorna say, you know, personally, you know, that was probably one of the best sessions that they ever did. You know, there's certainly it's certainly something that we want to continue, right? What are your recollections from that session?
I think the thing is that it was sad and glorious at the same time, that you saw these incredibly bright women who had no confidence about asking for what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And knowing that they're probably doing the work of, you know, a lot of their bosses and their own jobs as well, and not feeling like the door was open for them, or that they couldn't ask for what they wanted. And when they left that summit, you could see that these women felt empowered. They felt like, you know what? It's our turn. And we have a plan. And we're going to act upon that plan. We know our strengths. We're going to play to our strengths. We're going to find ourselves sponsors. We're not going to be afraid to exercise our voices, speak out, and go for the bloody brass ring. You know? And about time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've loved over the last few weeks starting to recruit people onto the next one in September. It's going to be incredible, I think. And yes, just hearing that some of those ladies speak about that experience now has just been phenomenal.
It's necessary, Michelle. It's necessary. Yeah. We have to do things like this, very specifically designed programs for this group of people.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's wonderful. And so I guess, you know, so we've had lockdown and coronavirus. We've had the George Floyd situation playing out in the US, and many organizations are really actively talking to their teams now and trying to work out, you know, how can they put plans in place? How can they navigate all of this? And on top of that, we've now got, you know, return from lockdown. You know, I think many organizations have now established that home working does work. It's amazing, isn't it, how those business continuity plans just kicked in at 150 miles an hour. Everyone ended up home working, and everyone's now seen that actually that can be really effective. So I'm personally hoping we will really learn from this experience, and that we can take all the good that we've learned forward and learn from the bad stuff too, and stop doing that. But in my mind, I'm thinking we're unlocking a whole new talent pipeline as well of women who have been juggling work-life balance, can work from home now really effectively. I mean, how do you think things are going to change? I hear lots of conversations about, you know, the new normal or the better normal, or, you know, winning the future. What do you think will change going forward, Lynn? And, you know, what are you hoping to see?
I'm hoping to see a much more flexible workforce, because what's happened is people have realized that you can be just as effective, if not more effective, by working flexibly. And not only that, I mean, to be honest, we all work differently. And some of us work better when someone is watching us, literally, physically watching us. Some of us also work better when we are in a community of people. But lots of us would like to do both of those things. And I think that the cost-saving aspects, it's always about the bottom line. The cost-saving aspects, but also the emotionally intelligent facets of this will come into play in a big way. And I think people will really embrace the ability for employees to work very differently, and in particular for women to work differently and to have a better work-life balance. And I think that they will see, as there is now proven evidence, that you can do that. And once you actually go back to school properly, women will be able to even focus greater. Because I think that this has been a trying time for some women who are at home. I can't tell you how many clients I have had, or I've been doing master classes and master coaching courses online of women collectively saying, how do I balance the work and teaching my kids and doing homeschooling and putting dinner on the table, and me going, hold up, are you a single mom or do you have a partner? And the ones who have a partner are like, oh yeah, I do have a partner, but they were so busy multitasking, micromanaging everything, that everything was just being done at 60%, because multitasking essentially just means that everything's done about 60%. Nothing's done 100%. I'm like, hey, stop playing the traditional role and get your partners involved in doing this as well. But when the kids go back to school and we're able to actually focus, I think people will have that kind of 3 days maybe in the office, 2 days at home, vice versa. I think there will be much more flexibility and an acknowledgement that it works and it will contribute to productivity, because people are working in a way that they are more effective and feel appreciated.
Inevitably, some organizations have really struggled through this lockdown period and are going to have to now look very carefully at their cost base, do some restructuring, and it's going to mean some job losses. One of the things I guess I'm really conscious of is, how do organizations do that and make sure that they, protect diversity? You said earlier on, and McKinsey studies and so forth have sort of borne this true, that diverse executive teams mean that we have much better effect on the bottom line. It drives better results in organizations. How do you do that? How do you look forward, re-strategize and plan and cut that cost base and protect diversity? I mean, what sort of things are you seeing, and what sort of advice are you giving as leaders go into that sort of challenge?
Well, I think leaders are in between a rock and a hard place. It's just a moment where so many things have converged, at once. And I think you would think that diversity and inclusion is going to go to the back of the, class, but it can't. It actually can't. So this is where the going gets tough and the tough get going. So what I think we will see is that people will, and I know that this has been happening already, they'll cut down some of their expenses and actually a considerable amount in bricks and mortar. And you'll find more hot seating and people, like we said, working flexibly. So that does save some money, some budget. And then the biggest thing is actually reworking how almost the infrastructure of how you bring together a collective that is productive, that is representative, and that has a big impact on the bottom line. So that really requires forward thinking. And everybody won't be able to do that. But if some key big businesses are able to do it and lead the way, I think you will see more people doing it. And I think small businesses will do that because they've already laid a foundation to do things like that. Their thinking process is different. So do I have an answer? If I had a crystal ball, God, I tell you, I am hopeful, slightly skeptical, but if there's a moment, here it is. But when I hear, our prime minister say things, let's have another, we're going to have a commission set up to explore, it's like, there have been 1,000 commissions about diversity inclusion. David Lammy did a commission, several years ago. Why don't you actually just act on some of the recommendations? We don't need another commission. We need action, but it needs to come from the leader. If we look around the world, there are not many strong leaders. Very, 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 very few. And until that leadership changes a bit, I don't know how much trickle down effect we're going to get, but I'm hopeful. It's a moment. It's a moment.
Yeah. And
we all have to do our part.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's that sort of, I spent many years in sort of global HR roles myself, and it's being, I think, a lot more strategic about how you do those selection processes. It's awful being in that situation where you've got to, reduce teams by a certain number. You've got those things. You just know that there are hard targets that you have to meet. But it's realizing that diverse teams are more successful. And, if you want that balance in decision-making processes, you want creativity, you want innovation, it's not just about gender, and it's not just about BAME, it's about everything.
It is.
So many people keep saying to me, is it a gender thing now? Is it a BAME thing now? What do you think, Lynn?
I think it's a diverse thing now. It's not just gender. It's not just BAME. It's about representation that looks like the world. It's about being a collective. The best collective that we can be, because that represents who we really are. And women in BAME people face the same kinds of discrimination. Women fare better in the numbers than BAME do, but we're all in the same boat, and it needs to be a collective.
Yeah.
And it just sounds like something that is achievable, but until people are willing to change the balance of power, until those people at the top feel they can let go and they can change and they can bring other people in, it's a difficult task. But if we keep pounding the pavement, knocking on the door, knocking down the doors, I think we'll get there eventually. Like I said, here's a moment. Can we make that happen?
Completely. And that's one of the things I've tried to really build into GENIE. We had a fantastic tool originally with so both primary and secondary research, really informing the questions we ask, because we know what the barriers are. We know what our data tells us. We know how many people we have at the different levels. But what we don't know is how to really question and get the feedback around where those barriers really exist in organisations, and what we can do to effectively help, and the interventions that are required within different sections of our community to really help shift the dial. So we've now built in everything from neurodiversity to social mobility to ethnicity, gender, age. We're looking at the whole spectrum so that we can really help organisations to understand their baseline and what these specific initiatives might be that really help them to move the dial on all of those areas.
But I think, Michelle, we're fighting history.
Yeah.
We're fighting systemic sexism and racism through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's built in to the very essence of our beings. So it is a change that we've been fighting for a long time, and a change that is very difficult to achieve. But we have to strive and survive. We must continue to fight and take advantages of the moments that we do get. And, that's by drilling in fact. And, even the most logical fact is you can't fight fact. And to appeal to kind of the very base things like the bottom line. You might not like it, but it will make you more money. You know? And at the same time, it can do wonderful things for society.
Yeah, the downside of one organization is the upside of another, I guess. You know, in the sense that if talent needs to be released, you know, brands really need to think about how to do that and how to do that in the right way. Because I don't know about you, but for me, I always felt that it was so important that if you have to let people go in adversity, and you know, sometimes, you know, the facts are that financially you just can't sustain certain individuals or certain workforce, or you've got to change direction. But looking after people on the way out of an organization is so critically important to a brand's reputation, and that individual and how they then go on and progress.
Yes.
It's almost as important, if not more important, than when they arrive and they're recruited and they come in. You know, I know that's something that we've all been talking about together at the Pipeline, in terms of, you know, how can we play a part in that journey, and how can we support women in terms of their next steps career-wise, because it, you know, it's a really difficult time to go through, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. But we do have to, you know, but that's what we're there for at the Pipeline, to be honest. That is what our mission is to create that layer of support and to actually help women think outside the box, because change does happen. Things do happen. Life happens. And it's not always a smooth ride. So it's very important that you know what your strengths are, that you know what your purpose is. And that comes from understanding the marriage of your values, your beliefs, and your passions. So if you're equipped with that knowledge, it can help you diversify when, you know, things don't go the way you planned.
Yeah. Well, Lynn, that's been absolutely brilliant. I've really enjoyed talking to you this morning. I know you're on a really tight schedule, so thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat about these things this morning. And I'm sure everybody that has a chance to have a look at this video that will go out with our newsletter will really enjoy the advice and guidance that you've shared with us this morning. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. What a pleasure.
Lovely. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.